everyone. So if you're seeing me in a different location, I'm in my daughter's room. My husband is sleeping right now. I don't want to disturb him in the room by filming in the closet. So I'm going to be doing my worst books I've read this year in 2023. I may end up offending some people. This is just my opinions, and that's just how it goes. So the first one I was not a fan of this year was When the Farmer Met the City Girl by Jessica Cain. So this one I end up giving a 2. So the characters are Bianca and Dusty. So I said it was beyond cheesy. I said they met on a dirt isolated road. Both are virgins, yet they get to like having sex like champs in no time. Daddy kink. Yeah. Typical sleazy casting director, sex in public, and breeding kink. So thankfully her books are never long, so I didn't have to DNF or suffer through this one. I said, but dang, the dialogue was really cheesy in this, and the awful stereotype of the farmer really irritated me. Now this here, if I try to remember, the heroine, I think, got deserted on an isolated street. And it was a lot of, the author made it kind of like more of a, have you ever seen Deliverance? You ever seen Deliverance? That's essentially, I think, what she was going for. So, it's where it's like they instant lust. And like I said, the whole like depictions of the farmer, and it's like, I don't think all farmers are that way. That's kind of a stereotype. You know, I hate when authors don't do proper research, you know, when it comes to a book. And it's like, you think a farmer does this, and it's like, why don't you actually look up what farmers do? Because it's a stereotype and you're putting down farmers. You know, especially making it sound like farmers are uneducated and all this other stuff. And I'm like, you do know the reason why we have farmers, right? So that way it fills up your grocery stores. So yeah, it just really irritated me of that. And then she was like going to Hollywood, trying to go to Hollywood to become like a star. And so she ends up like, after them hooking up and everything, she ends up leaving. But then she goes to the director's, you know, director's couch, you know. And I'm just like, that's typical. That's like a typical sleazy casting director. Like, oh, let me sleep with you and then you can get the part. And I'm like, so yeah, that was irritating too. So I ended up like, you know, it just, and like I said, the cheesy dialogue, you know, especially when it's something that's like, you know, daddy kink. And for me, I've come to like absolutely loathe daddy kink. It's just not my thing. I don't like that. I don't like when the hero is called daddy. It's just not my cup of tea. No, thank you. So the next one I read was Jessica Cain. I've pretty much kind of like been like leery, like, do I want to delve in? And from what I'm hearing, Jessica Cain also stated that she's not going to be writing anymore because she says that she has to keep dealing with like piracy and things like that. That's wrong. But honestly, who would want to pirate her books? Honestly, you know, it's like you can get that stuff free through Kindle Unlimited. You don't want to pirate her books. That wouldn't be the author I'd pirate, honestly. So I don't know if maybe that is the case or if she's just getting a little too butthurt because people don't like her work. I mean, all she does is write novellas. That's all she writes is novellas. So the next one was As If I Wouldn't Fall by Jessica Cain. Now this one here is Isla and Flint. So it's teens getting pregnant. I said they're both 18, so technically they're adults, but still they're still teenagers. Breeding kink and an obsessive hero. I said this was beyond cheesy. It honestly made me roll my eyes and laugh. And I had like highlights to it and stuff where, you know, he was like, oh, baby, you can come to me kind of thing anytime you want to. You know I'll help you. And she's like, I barely know you. And it's like, yeah, Listen to the girl. She doesn't even know you. You never spoke to her. All of a sudden, you're telling her, you can come to me, baby, anytime you want. And I'm just like, oh, please. It was just so cheesy. So cheesy. I was just like, oh my God, no. It was just so bad. It was so bad. And I'm like, you know, I don't really consider myself a writer. I liked writing like short stories and poems and stuff like that back in the day, but I'm like, I think I could write something better than that, you know, honestly. But man, I see I don't, for the fact that I know I'll be probably torn to pieces, you know, in review sections and stuff like that. And I know I would have a hard time like not going to the Goodreads and stuff like that. So yeah, I'd probably be butthurt by, you know, people like honestly like reviewing my books and stuff like that. That's why I don't write, because I don't like criticism. I know I don't like criticism. Even when I did art, I did not like people critiquing my work. So I can understand, you know, authors like, you know, feeling butthurt and stuff like that. I get it, but don't attack a reviewer. It's not worth it. So the next one was The Duke Buys a Bride by Sophie Jordan. Now this is part of the Rogue Files, and I've noticed that this author is just not for me. I even said it in my review. So I gave it a 2. The characters are Alice Bell and Marcus, Duke of Autenbury. So I said, I've realized that Sophie Jordan isn't the right author for me. I've tried to read a couple of books of hers before this book, but I ended up DNFing them. I found this audiobook on Anyplay and I decided to listen to this instead. So Alice Bell is in a desperate situation, married at 15, in name only, to an older man, a friend of her father's. Her father passed away, so she needed someone to care for her until she can get another man to marry. She has lived as a maid to her husband, taking care of all of the household needs and also caring for the older man's children. But once she's 22 years of age, her husband wants Alice to leave his home so he can marry an older widow who is a complete harpy. The woman is just a complete bitch. And also not sympathetic to Alice's like plight, you know, and she's like, oh, can't wait to get rid of you so I can marry him. And it's like, bitch. Oh man, I wanted to slug her in the face because she was just not sympathetic at all. And it's like, how can you be so unfeeling, you know, especially because it's like she was married in name only to this man so he can, you know, have it to where she doesn't end up as like a prostitute or something like that, you know, especially like back in the day for women. You would think that other women would be sympathetic to or other women back in that time, you know, and wanting to help each other. So for her, she was just such a complete bitch. I was just like, be rid of this woman, you know. Alice had an arrangement for years with a male friend of hers that they would marry, so he would buy her out of her current marriage and he would take the place of her husband. But once at the wife auction, she's told that her friend went off to London by himself. So she's abandoned and desperate to get out of the situation, especially with like the men leering at her and looking at her and all that stuff. And she doesn't know what kind of intentions these people have toward her. So she's scared, you know, honestly, I'd be scared too. You're essentially being sold as a slave, you know. So Marcus sees that this young lady is going to be sold off and possibly not treated right. So he feels like it's his duty to save her by buying her. Unfortunately, he didn't count on the contract to mean that she would now become his wife. So I said, throughout most of this book, I wasn't a fan of Marcus. He was a huge jackass and extremely smug and acted entitled. I guess he can feel that way because the man is a duke. I said they traveled along on horseback, for her a donkey, and that irritated me because I felt like he thought of her as like less than, and that to me was just like, really? You couldn't have like put her on your horse, or you couldn't have like got a horse? You had to go and give her a donkey? That's that's insulting to me, you know? So it says not until chapter 16 that the horse's ass, and I'm not talking about the donkey here, starts to show that he actually cared for her when he saw that she had a fever and was sick. But by then, I just didn't care if he showed her that he actually had a heart. So I said, I don't need a love match right away in my books, but Sophie Jordan has a way of away with writing where the beginning of her books, the men are all assholes, and it makes it difficult for me to carry on to see if the assholes actually change for the heroine. I would prefer for the men to be more guarded and aloof, but not total dicks like Sophie seems to write her heroes. I'm not sure if Sophie Jordan's heroes have changed in her newer books, but so far I haven't been impressed with this author's way of writing her heroes. Therefore, I would rather not read any more books by her. It's just, you know, you can have it to where maybe like the dude's an asshole, but he's not an asshole to her. Like maybe he's more aloof, more trying to kind of keep himself back kind of thing, you know, keep himself together. He was a total asshole. He was a total asshole for the fact that she didn't ask to be in that situation. She didn't ask to be married off to him, you know. She just wanted to be free of that situation where she could just live her life, you know. And the fact that he felt sympathetic for her, that he got her from the auction block, but then treated her like crap for like most of the book. It really infuriated me. And it just makes it to where I'm like, how can I go and feel sympathy for this guy or have his redemption if he treated her like crap throughout most of the book? You're not going to get me with that. I'm sorry. It's like, I don't want a guy to completely kiss a woman's ass. You know, like I don't want a woman who would like, say if a guy is like, he's a cinnamon roll, like he's so sweet. And then the heroine treats the guy like shit for most of the novel. I don't like that either. I want them to be able to where it's like, maybe they're a little guarded with each other to where it's, you know, it takes them like time to develop some type of relationship. I don't mind if it's a slow burn. I used to hate slow burns, but now I'd rather have that over hookup, you know? So to me, it was like, he was just a dick. And I really just did not like this guy at all. And it seems to be her kind of MO with Sophie Jordan, is she seems to write a lot of assholes to where, oh, they're redeemable. And I'm like, honestly, no. There's been some assholes that I have read before that I'm like, this guy's such a dipshit. But then I was like, you know what? He's growing out of me. This guy did not grow out of me at all. You know, not at all. I wanted to light him on fire. So... like, oh, what's it? There's a couple of books where I loved the hero, like he redeemed himself, like Devil in Winter. I felt like Sebastian St. Vincent redeemed himself for Evie. I totally felt like he redeemed himself. He was a cad, he was a Lothario and all that stuff. He was a bit of a douche, you know, but he grew on you. You could see he was evolving as a person, you know? And that's what I want to see. I want to see enough growth with the character in order for me to believe that this guy's actually changed. You know, it's the same thing, the heroine. I want to believe that this character actually changed enough to where I'd want them to be with that other person. Otherwise, I'm like, you deserve better. Let's just get rid of this person. So yeah, to me, it's like you have to have two characters that mesh well together. Otherwise, the whole story just falls apart. So the next one is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. I had a lot of issues with this one. So I gave this a 2. It was Kala and Jonah. I said, this is not a romance. I did not feel like this was a romance. I said, this definitely was more of a women's fiction. I said, there are sex scenes, but they're more fade to black or barely written on page. If this is still considered a romance, it's more light, definitely light on the spice. But I really didn't feel like this was a romance. I felt like it was definitely more women's fiction than romance, you know? I said, so I first tried reading this book in 2022, and I put it down because I wasn't feeling it at the time. I have a physical copy of this, and I wanted to just get it read, so I listened to this on Scribd. Now instead of it being called Scribd, now it's called something else. I think it's Everend or something like that. Everend? Something like that. They changed the name, but it's still the same stuff. So it says, Kala is a yuppie hipster entitled judgmental spoiled brat who recently was let go from her job. She wasn't happy with her job anyways. Her true passion is getting a business going on social media so her and her friend can create a brand for themselves. And I'm like, okay. Everybody thinks they have something special when they go online. It's like everybody who goes and they're like, oh, I started a podcast. And I'm like, yeah, so did a million other people. It's like, nobody is like original anymore. Everybody's like copying everyone else. Everyone wants to be Joe Rogan, you know? So for me, it's like, everyone wants to be like having Joe Rogan's numbers, you know? And for me, I'm just like, why don't you come out with something original? Use your brain and try to come up with something different, you know? Everybody's doing the same fucking thing. It is boring. So Calla and her mother have lived in Toronto for years, and Calla's father hasn't really talked to her since she was 14. I said, yeah, she definitely has daddy abandonment issues. There was a falling out between them, and this is why they haven't talked in years. She was born in a small town in Alaska, and Calla's mother couldn't continue living that lifestyle, so she left her husband for more of a city lifestyle. But Calla does have a great stepdad who is a therapist, so he could talk to her about the issues she does have. I really wish that that therapist stepfather could have worked on the mother. I think the mother had issues, and I'm like, dude, you need to like psychoanalyze your wife because she's got some issues, man. Woo. So it said Calla gets a call from a woman in Alaska to let her know that her father has lung cancer. So Calla heads to Alaska to spend time with her dad and get to know him in case he doesn't beat the cancer. She ends up getting picked up by this grouchy bush pilot, and he takes her to her father. This is the other thing, is like, I don't like romances that have like character deaths and things like that. That to me is not a romance. When you have character deaths, it's better be a bad guy, you know? Otherwise, I don't really care for like family members dying and stuff like that. It kind of like, it teeters on women's fiction, you know? Women's fiction, it's all about the woman's journey, and that's essentially what this was, you know? Ugh. So it says the things I didn't like was that I freaking hated Calla. I did not like her. As I said before, she was an entitled spoiled brat who was judgmental towards everyone in that small town. She travels to Alaska in high heel wedges. That was my first tip-off point, where I'm like, girl, did you not research Alaska? Especially during a certain time frame, like in the winter. You are not going to go to Alaska wearing like high heel wedges, girl. You're going to freaking freeze. Your fucking feet are going to freeze to the ground. It gets super cold there. And I think even in the summer, I think the highest it gets is maybe like 70 degrees or something like that. I don't think it gets like super hot because it gets super cold there, you know. And there's areas of Alaska where it's, there's certain areas of Alaska where you have to fly in. You have to fly in, fly supplies in, and fly supplies out. And that was essentially almost like this area where they had like medical supplies that needed to get like shipped out a lot, so that way they can drop them at certain towns and things like that. And I was like, yeah, you know, it's not like the city, you know, like I'd say Anchorage it's probably more of developed city because there's a lot of people there. And usually if there's a lot of people there, it's going to be a very developed city, and they're going to have like all this different, you know, amenities and things like that. Where other parts of Alaska that are more rural, you're probably not going to have that, you know. And her father definitely lived in a more smaller town. So it made no sense to me that she didn't like research the area she was going to. That's what I always do. There's fucking Google. Google is your friend. Why didn't you just go Google where you're heading to? What's the weather like? What should I wear on my trip? Those are, you know, very simple things. Very simple things. And she didn't do that. She acted like she was going to like Hawaii or some shit, you know? So I said, who with common sense thinks it's a smart idea to go to a state that has a lot of harsh weather and open-toed high heel wedges? I said, she was a complete dumbass, and she also had a ton of luggage. I said, honey, you do not need all that stuff just for a visit. I said, has no one ever heard of packing light and buying things you need once you are there? I said, am I the only one who does this? I said, why did you bring jewelry and makeup? I said, who are you trying to impress? I said, who needs $100 t-shirt? And then Jonah was basically telling her, like, girl, you don't need makeup. You don't need all that makeup all over your face. And some women, they may feel like, oh, I'm offended. Oh, how dare he say that I don't need makeup? And it's like, he's telling you look good without it. Stop being fucking butthurt like a little baby. So, like for me, when I met my husband, I wasn't wearing makeup. Just like this. I'm not impressing anybody. I could dress up if I want to. I can go and make myself up, put lipstick on if I want to. But most times I'm like, I don't even bother. Because it's a lot of money. I've already wasted money on makeup before. And you really don't really need to do much. Just cover up, like if you have like some, breakouts and stuff like that, you just need like a concealer and maybe some lipstick. If you want to go and put on some like, eyeshadow or something like that, that's fine too. Mascara. You just need the basics. You don't need like all of these things, So for her, it's like, girl, you're going to like a harsh area. You don't need to dress all nice and fancy. Nah. And then as for the t-shirt, it's like, you actually bought $100 t-shirt. Really? It's like back in the day, they had those like Ed Hardy shirts with all the fucking like jewels and stuff like that on there and everything. And I'm like, I looked at that in the store and I felt like how thin that shirt was. And I'm like, are they fucking kidding me? They're going to charge how much for this shirt? Get fucked. I'm not buying that. No. You get ripped off. You're just dumb. You are a dumb consumer if you go and buy yourself a stupid $100 Ed Hardy shirt that's going to fucking like one wash and it's going to be fucked up. So, no thanks. So I was like, you're not very financially smart. You're being dumb buying a $100 t-shirt. So she complains that she can't find a Starbucks. Boo. Oh, my heart weeps. Oh. So, and ends up going to this small shop there for coffee. I said, even though she doesn't like the taste of coffee, but she likes the, I need my coffee, but I don't like the taste of it. Hence why Miss Bougie Ass, only orders lattes at her local Starbucks. You still taste the coffee with lattes. If you don't like the taste of coffee, then don't drink coffee. You can still get caffeine from other places, not just coffee. Then once she is at this small store, she asks for a latte and they said they don't make them because they make regular coffee. And says, so she grudgingly orders a coffee and then complains that she can't have milk because she's allergic. So she needs soy milk or almond milk or possibly cashew. I said, seriously, there is cashew milk out there? Really? I thought oat milk was bad enough. I said, but cashew milk? I said, I get it if she's allergic to milk. A good amount of people out there are. But if there's no other alternative, you could survive without it. Like you don't need cream for your coffee. Like if I run out of cream for my coffee and I already made my coffee, there's no milk, there's nothing, any kind of coffee creamer or something like that, I'm going to go without. And I'm just going to drink it black, because I'm not a pussy. So, but, she could have just ordered a black coffee and just stopped fucking complaining. But for the fact that she was like, oh, you don't have soy? And it's like, no, honey, we don't have soy, or if they did have soy, like I think they had like an off-brand or something like that, that was in the store, but they didn't have it in the coffee shop. So they got it from the store so they could appease her. And then she was like, oh, this is the off-brand. You don't have silk? And I'm just like, oh my God, this girl is just too much. She is fucking too much. I am so annoyed with her. I don't want to, See, I could never work at Starbucks because the amount of entitled little pricks that come into that store and they're asking for like all this shit, I would be like, really? You are so entitled. And the amount of people who get coffee every day at Starbucks, you know how much that rings up? It's expensive. Why don't you just make coffee at home? It's very easy. It doesn't do much. You don't have to do much to make it, you know? So the fact that how many people just keep giving Starbucks money? Like, I'll get something that's maybe non-coffee related at like Starbucks, maybe like a drink or something like that, like maybe tea or something, you know? Every now and again, like if I run into a Starbucks, but otherwise it's not something I go to all the time. Like, oh, I just have to have my Starbucks every day. No. I make my tea and my coffee at home. Saves me money. I said, so Jonah, understandably, is a bit bitter and hostile towards her. So I completely understood his judgment on her. I did not like her either. So I said, I have no idea how these two even fell for each other when they finally do get involved. It's past the 50% point. So I said, I did like that Calla got to know her father better, but he does eventually die of cancer. And so I'm like, this was fucking sad, because you got her father that she barely knew, that she really didn't want to know, because obviously whatever it was that her mother told her about her father kind of like, you know, put that in her head, like, oh, well, I don't really want to get to know my dad. And then it's like you finally want to get to know him and it's too late, you know? So to me, it was like, you could have made the effort. You could have made the effort to go to your dad earlier and had some time to get to know him and get to know the area he lives, you know? I could not stand that bitch. Oh, I fucking hated her. I absolutely hated her. She was so entitled, so bougie. I was just like, really? You know, I can make things work. You know, if I'm in a situation and I'm like, well, I can't have this or that I usually always get, I go for something else. I'm like, you know what? I'll make it work. I'll make it work. For her, I gotta have my soy. And then her mother like gets on the phone. Don't they realize that you have an allergy? And it's like, no, honey, you didn't call ahead to let us know. Oh, God. Her mother was just a nightmare. A nightmare. I honestly don't know what these men saw in these women. So the next one was Grim and Barrett by Juliet Cross. I gave it a 3 at first, but then I lowered it to a 2. I did not like this one at all. And it's a shame too, because I really loved the whole entire series. When it came to this one, I felt like Juliet Cross choked up and just wanted to be done with the series, you know? So the characters are Clara and Henry. I said, well, I was hoping that I would love this book because Clara and Henry have been teased within this whole series, but here was my issues with this book. So I said, number 1, why did Clara and Henry get together so quickly? It was quick, fast. It's like insta-lust. I said, I usually like it where there's some push and pull and some build up, so when the couple finally get together, you, the reader, have a sense of completion. So I said, 2, after Clara and Henry put the P in the V several times in the night, I said, oh, also, Henry is a virgin, but he can screw like a corn star because he watched a lot of porn. This was actually said in there. He's like, well, I watched a lot of porn. And I'm like, you still need to practice with an actual person, and porn is not reality, so yeah. Just like, what? Yeah. I said, also the dirty talk just rubbed me the wrong way. I said, normally I like the sex scenes in this book, in, you know, these books, you know, her series and stuff like that. I usually liked the sex scenes. But I said in this one here, I just wasn't feeling it in this one. It reminded me way too much of like TikTok, you know? I said, once they say their I love yous, Henry has to help his father solve his fiance's murder. So his father is necromancer or something like that. And she was a human. So she ended up getting killed by like one of the other supernaturals, you know? And so her soul was basically stuck in like a purgatory. So she needed help getting out of it and like, you know, going to heaven and all that stuff. Or whatever they call it, you know, going to the veil or, you know. So I just didn't like how the setup was, where it's like, oh, they just get together and now they're kind of like separated in order to like solve all this shit and then get back together and everything, you know, and then go. It would have been better if it was like, the story progressed where he came to her and said, I need your help. My father is in a situation and can you help me with it? And then as they were doing the investigation, they could have finally succumbed to their feelings. That, I think, would have been a better setup for the story. But they had it to where it was too soon for me. And then there was that separation. Some authors are able to do it, like, they were able to do that, you know, and some authors aren't. Unfortunately, I don't think Juliet Cross just nailed it with this one here. I said, so 3, the investigation parts of the series wrapped up too easily and quickly. I was not shocked with who the killer in the book was. So I said 4, also there was a surprise pregnancy in here, and I was not surprised. I said Clara is supposed to be so in tune with herself and her aura powers, but she doesn't realize she's pregnant. Made no sense to me. Especially since she predicted and like knew when her other sisters were pregnant. And I'm like, how come you didn't know when you were pregnant? I mean, that's something that we pretty much know, like as women, if you're really in tune with your body, you know that there are changes that happen to your body that kind of indicate to you that you could be pregnant. Like for me, when I got pregnant with my first child, I noticed that within like a couple of weeks, I started feeling nauseous. You know, at least 2 or 3 weeks after I got pregnant, I noticed I was getting nauseous, and it was like everyday nausea, and it would happen all day. And the only time I would be able to eat, physically eat, is I had to eat crackers and ginger ale in order for me to calm my stomach down so I could eat food. And then when it came to like, after 4 weeks of me being pregnant, I did a test, and that's when I found out I was pregnant. And then into my first trimester, I noticed I did not like red meat. Red meat was just disgusting to me. I love red meat. I love steak. I love cheeseburgers. Couldn't go near them. Couldn't go near pork. It just made me want to vomit. The only thing I could actually eat was chicken. So it's like you will notice changes in your body, and the fact that she didn't know the changes in her body, especially having that aura sensory and all that stuff, it just was like, it didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense. So number 5, Clara, you know, toward the end of the book, moves in front of a bullet and dies. Henry has to go into the veil to get her out. And this reminded me too much of the Disney movie Hercules, where Hercules goes into the underworld and drags Mega's soul out and places her back in her body. I said number 6, the freaking ending had so many kids. You know, so many kids, and the names just kept like getting confused with me. I actually needed like a visual family tree, so that way I'm not confused, because I'm like, whose kid is this? No, wait, whose kid is this now? Here's another kid. Jesus Christ, there's so many kids, you know. I just was like, when authors do this, like, I like kids. I do. But when you have so many kids at the end, it's too much. It's too much. It's much too much, you know. I said, I also want to mention that over time I've come to hate when authors make musical playlists for their books, and in the paragraphs of certain scenes, a character or the author will say that a certain song is playing in the background. I said, this has become annoying as fuck to me. I said, I don't need someone else's playlist to give me a proper setting of the story. I said, I can understand where a movie has a musical score in the background. It helps with foreshadowing when it comes to the next scene. But books don't do that. The writer has to write well enough to have the reader pick up on the foreshadowing. I said, but I guess that's a me issue. I said, I personally don't like playlists anymore, and I really wish authors would stop doing it, because I'm like, I could see if you had a writer playlist, like you listen to these songs when you were writing the book. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And you can even put that at the beginning of it. But don't say, this song's playing as this scene is progressing in the book. I don't like that. I'd rather come up with my own songs for that scene. Like, there was a book I read a couple years ago where there was a song by this this musician. I can't remember his name, but it was it's more bluesy. And when that scene came up in the book, I'm like, ooh, you know what would be the perfect song for this scene? Would be this here. And so I gave myself like a little highlight in the chapter where I went and took a post-it note and I wrote down song and name. And whenever I go and I read the book again, reread it, I listen to that song, and it's a perfect song for me that encapsulates that scene. So for me, it's like if somebody gave me a different song, it'd be hard for me to kind of, you know, connect in that book. So I don't like it when authors do that. Please do not do that. If you're an author, please do not put down in this scene, this song's playing. It's not a movie script. It's a book. It's different. So, I also felt like the author had too much of herself in this book. The heroine, Clara, has a romance book club, which I don't particularly like, because I'm like, it's too much like, you know, oh, you have a romance book club. And I'm like, really? You couldn't have had a horror book club? Or say like Clara has a book club where they talk about spells or something like that. Or they talk about crystals and things like that, you know? Stuff like that. And I said, and they were currently reading a Lisa Kleypas book. I said, it was the Ravenel series. I said, also the author brought up Alisa Braden, and that is an indie author. So a lot of people may not get that reference if you do not know a lot of indie authors. I said, I feel like the author could have had Clara's romance group read more classic romance books that were more recognizable, or just a classic book like Pride and Prejudice. I said, since everyone pretty much knows that book. I said, I really wanted to like this, but unfortunately there were how many issues I had with it. I said, sometimes authors have trouble with series. They either fail in the first book with too much world building, or they fail in their last book. I said, series can be difficult. So I realized that she was probably doing her best. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. So the next one, I did an individual review of this, but I went and put it on private because I'm like, I'm trying not to be like too negative when I do like individual reviews and stuff. So I might have been overly harsh with this, but you know, I'm going to say it for my worst books. So I ended up reading Mile High by Liz Tom Ford. I gave it a 3, even though I wanted to give it like a 2, but I gave it a 3 just to be nice. I don't feel like this is the type of book that's for me. Like, it doesn't fit my demographic. Like, maybe if I read this book like 20 years ago, like when I was in my early 20s, I might have liked this book. But now I'm in my 40s. I have a different, my tastes have changed when it comes to romance and, you know, stuff like that. So it's just not for me. So I had said, I tried reading this book before and I DNF'd it, so I decided to reread this on Scribd and figured that listening to it would be a better experience. So I said, my reading experience, I said, Xanders is a complete womanizing douchebag, and I'm supposed to root for this guy to get the girl. I said, he has hookup women in every area code. I got hoes in every area code. Essentially, I was wishing he got an incurable venereal disease. Yes. Also, he rates the women on what sexual stuff they did. What a fucking dick. I said, Stevie is the not like other girls type. I said, her best friend is her twin brother. And I'm like, okay. I said, I find that so hard to believe. And I said, her mom sounds like a major piece of shit, because she would constantly critique her daughter on her curves, which is something that you were born with, you dumb bitch. You know, I said, if you have a big butt, the only way you're getting rid of it is if you get plastic surgery. So I said, so of course this makes her super insecure, and her friends from school would critique her clothes and her body shape as well. And it was funny because reading this book, supposedly Xanders was black. And I'm like, I wasn't getting that with the description. I'm thinking this guy's white. And they're like, oh, well, I finally clicked in where I was like, this guy is black. Okay. But the author didn't do a good enough description. To me, I feel like, Black authors are going to write better descriptions for their own race. That's how I feel. I feel like if you're a Black author, you're going to write better descriptions for your own race. Same thing with white people. We're going to write better descriptions for our own race because that's what we know. That's what we've grown up with, Unless you have like a mixed family where you had all different races and stuff like that. But to me, I felt like she didn't give a good enough description for Xander's for me to visualize him as a Black man. And then same thing with like, when it comes to her, what the fuck's her name again? What is her name again? I forget. Stevie. That's what it is. That was the other thing I didn't like, is you made this girl's name like a boy's name. Stevie. That was hard for me to grasp, And the thing I didn't like about this too was that it almost seemed like the author was trying to make Stevie's mother, who's white, like the enemy. Like, ooh, white people bad kind of thing. That's what I got from it. Just the tone of it, So her mother, she's then telling her biracial daughter, which the only really kind of like incentive that it kind of told me that this was a biracial girl was because of her hair. Now, my children are biracial. Their father, was Black. He's deceased now. So they have really curly hair. And I have to work on it. It takes me some time, to work on their hair. And they have different things that I have to do for their hair. Like they have to wear like silk caps at night and things like that, because cotton tends to dry out curly hair. Also putting different products in the hair that maybe I don't use for my hair. There's different types of curls, so you have to know the curl type to do like the proper product. It's taking me years to find good products for my daughters. I've gone through all different products to try to get through their hair without really hurting their heads. So it just really infuriated me that the mother really didn't know her daughter's hair. And it's like, how does she not know her hair? Did she not grow up with her daughter? You're going to know what products to use, what you have to do with the child's hair, because you gave birth to them. You have to learn to do this. Otherwise, you just look like an ignorant bitch. So I said she's telling her biracial daughter to brush her hair to tame it down. I said, has her mother never worked on her daughter's hair before? I have biracial daughters, and I know that you do not just brush it while it's dry. I said, this author is white. Has she never known anyone with naturally curly hair or known biracial families? I said, so I'm not sure if the author is deliberately making Stevie's white mother look ignorant, because that's what it seemed like to me. Stevie and her mother had a very bad relationship. And it's like, do you like Black people? Why get involved with a Black man and have children if you don't even like Black? It seemed very ignorant to me. And that's why I said it seemed like the author was trying to make the mother look bad because the mom's white. There are white women who know how to work on Black hair because they've been around it enough. So I said, I also found it way too convenient that Xander's and Stevie kept bumping into each other. I said, it's Chicago. You're telling me the city is that small? Come on now. I said, I don't like the fact that Stevie uses the Tinder app to hook up with random guys wherever she goes as a flight attendant. I said, so she's not any better than Xander's being a horn dog. She was like, oh, he's such a dog. And I'm like, girl, you use the Tinder app anytime you want to hook up with a dude. How is what you do any better than what he does? Come on. You sound like a misandrist. So I said, I thought it was also convenient that he wasn't that much of a Casanova because it's for his image, which I was like, give me a break. Hockey? Really? You're going to have some kind of hockey image? That just seems so stupid to me. If that's what they do, that's so stupid. I said, both of these characters are so unlikable and stereotypical. I said, I found it very convenient that Sanders has mental health struggles, So it makes us, the readers, justify his horrible behavior towards women. I said, he's damaged, lady. So let's try to fix him. We need to fix him because he's broken. The only person who's fixing themselves are themselves. If I have issues, I have to work on my own issues. That motherfucker needs to work on his own issues. I can't save him. I said, he also has been going to therapy for years, but it doesn't seem to be working. And it's like, well, he's been going to therapy for 10 years. And I'm like, yeah, get a different therapist, or, you know, stop paying that therapist that you're going to, because it ain't working. You know, it ain't working. So I said, I'm either not enjoying hate to love romance tropes anymore. I just don't like this one. It was just that one. I've liked other ones. So I also didn't like all of the sex talk in this, when she would see him half dressed on the plane and she notices that he has an anaconda in his boxer briefs and he wasn't even hard. It was just like, what? Also, he kept sexualizing her as well. It was annoying as fuck to me. I don't like, you know, there are ways like that you could see the attraction between the characters and it doesn't have to be sexual. You don't have to go straight to sex, like, oh, he looks like he's got a big dick, you know, kind of thing. And I'm just like, really? Really? We don't need to go there. You could do better right than that, you know? Make it more romantic. And it just seems like it's just fucking, you know? And I'm just like, I don't care for that. Maybe the younger generation does, but I don't. So I said, why did the author feel the need to have the characters mention what brands they wear? It was like all over the book. I said, as the reader, I don't need to know that information in order to picture the story in our heads. It was like, oh, I'm going to my G-Wagon. I'm like, oh, great, grand, wonderful. I'm glad you have a fucking G-Wagon. I don't care. I don't fucking care. You're a popular hockey player that gets paid like a good amount of money. I can suspect you have a good car. You know, I live in LA. I see where the LA Kings play. I see where the LA, you know, Lakers play. I know that they have nice cars. So you don't have to like give me that information. And we pretty much know that. If you watch professional sports, you know these people have nice cars, you know? So I'm like, you don't have to give me that, you know, like, oh, like, she's putting on her Nike pumps. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, I didn't need that. I didn't need that information. It was just stupid. So Stevie finally gives into Xander's wanting of her because her battery-operated boyfriend died. If you know what I mean, a battery-operated boyfriend. While she was at a hotel, and because she didn't want to use her fingers, she DMs him on his Instagram. She meets up with him and they have a one-night stand. Of course, Xander's catches feelings. He wants to keep banging it out with her, and Stevie is worried about losing her job. And I'm like, well, you should have thought about that. You should have thought about that before you put the P in the V. I don't know. I mean, that's, you know, just use your fingers, you know, there's other things too, you know, like not all women like penetration. Some women like the bell rung and they're good to go. You know, so, the next is Xander's dressing as Elsa to please his best friend's daughter for Halloween. I said, then going to therapy. Stevie hanging out with her family at Christmas time, and her mother picking on her for how much food Stevie is putting on her plate. As I started getting bored around chapter 20 through 22, I said, there's a charity foundation. Stevie's ex-boyfriend Brett shows up, and Xander's gets jealous. Her ex doesn't seem to get the hint. I said, what a fucking tool. I said, Xander's asks Stevie out on a date. Stevie wants to date him, but his public image is a problem. I'm like, but your private image is okay? Okay. I says, they do start secretly dating around halfway through the book. So I said, G-Wagon car sex with a purple vibrator. And I was like, Said, Stevie frustrates me with her not talking to her family more. It's not until more than halfway through the book where Stevie tells her brother Ryan how much of a piece of crap her ex-boyfriend is because Ryan is friends with her ex. Why didn't you go and talk to your brother? Oh, well, I didn't want to go and ruin the friendship. Fuck that. Tell your fucking brother your friend's a goddamn douchebag. He's got plenty of other friends. That's the thing with guys. Guys can make friends easy. It's women, we have a hard time fucking making friends, you know? So it's the Stevie enjoys thrifting, but I don't understand why she stays with her brother for free since she can afford to rent an apartment and also adopt some senior dogs. So Xander takes her to an expensive jewelry store, and I'm like, ugh, really? Why you gotta front? Why you gotta front? I said they get way too comfortable being a couple, that they slip up and Xander's agent gives him a hard time. So I said, then Stevie can't fit into some clothes that she had, and that frustrated me because if she cared about gaining weight, then she'd chill out on the takeout or junk food her and Xander's have been eating a lot. I said she could go to the gym and work out. You know, that was the thing with this book. She was like, oh, my weight is always fluctuated. My bitch, my weight always fluctuates. This is why you pick up spandex or you pick up, like, you know, shorts or pants that have stretchy, so it stretches, do that, a lot of women, weight tends to fluctuate, especially with our hormones and stuff like that. It tends to fluctuate. You ain't special, honey. We all kind of deal with that same thing, but I wear stretchy pants, and especially, like, I didn't see her, like, ever go to the gym, and I'm like, bitch, you're gaining weight because you need to go to the fucking gym. Go for a walk. Go ride a fucking bike. Go swimming. Something, Lose that fucking, all the calories you took in eating that goddamn fast food. This is then they're photographed and hate comments permeate over the internet about Xander's girlfriend. I said, okay, so don't read the comments. Stay off of the internet. I said, his agent is a moron, talking about fans watch Xander's play hockey so they could see him go home with a different girl after every game. And I'm like, really? Guys don't care about that. They just care about the fucking game. I said, are you kidding me? People watch these players because they like the sport. It's a distraction from their real lives. They don't give a crap if a player's a horn dog or not. I said, his agent is a snake in the grass. I said, because he doesn't want to drag Stevie down with him, Xander's ends up breaking up with her. I said, I knew this was I knew it would happen. Third act breakup, and I'm like, fucking figures. I said, this reminds me of Patrick Mahomes. He said he's a popular football player and he has been with his wife since high school. His wife is a complete nightmare. If you ever seen her like on, like, at games and stuff like that, she's so annoying. I said, people talk shit online about her because she makes it about herself. I said, when they won a game, she opened up a champagne bottle and got other people below her wet because she dumped it over the railing. I said, she does other stuff as well, and that's why I think a lot of people don't like her. I said, over the years, I've seen football shift to where they want to show the football players' families, and that to me is a bad idea. I said, no one cares about the wags that the players have. It's wives and girlfriends, So I said, it just stirs up drama because it takes away from the sport and makes it a soap opera. That's probably why some men have stopped watching sports, because it used to be about the game, and now it's the media doing news stories of the players' wives and their children. So personally, I don't give a shit, and I know others feel the same. I said, so Stevie's going to move to Seattle, and Xander's is thinking of trading to another team. I said, ending of the book has Xander's and Madison winning the Stanley Cup, and I'm like, yeah, typical. I said, Stevie shows up, but Xander's doesn't see her. The city does a parade for the team winning. Xander shows up at the shelter that Stevie volunteers at. He tells her he loves her, and she forgives him. I said, it ended way too easily for me. I said, I felt so old listening to this book. I said, this book was entirely too long. I wonder why the author chose hockey for the sport, the hero to play. I said, hockey isn't a black-dominated sport. I said, there's only 46 players in the NHL as of the 2021-2022 season. There was only 46 players in the whole fucking NHL that were black. That's small. That's not a lot. It is a rich man's sport. If you go and you look up hockey, how much hockey helmets cost, how much the padding that you're going to need cost, it's a lot. It's like thousands of dollars just to play. It says, but I'm glad I've been seeing more lately of like black players in when it comes to hockey, because it's like we need to have more diverse in that sport because there's a lot of white people in that sport, you know? So with basketball, there's like all ranges of people. You know, same thing when it comes to like baseball or, yeah, baseball, golf, you know, there's different things like that that kind of has more diverse people, where with hockey it was a lot of white people. And you know, you have people in that sport, like especially the parents, because I know this because I've been around hockey parents before, and they get really bougie when it comes to their kids and having like all of these expensive gear, and you got to have this certain brand name and all this other shit. So I'm like, I could see like if say a black family who maybe is not well off trying to get into that sport, you know, especially because he's like he said his father like struggled to get him into that sport, you know, and for him to play and all that stuff. And if you're not well to do, you know, you have kids looking at you like, oh, look at your, you know, look at your gear. It's a very entitled sport. So if I was, you know, a parent, I would go with a cheaper sport: soccer, baseball, you know, football, basketball. You know, football is a subsidized sport, you know, so you can get like free gear, things like that. So where with hockey, not happening, you know, unless you live in Canada and you're under the socialized thing where you get like the hand-me-downs and stuff. That was happening in Canada. Canadians would get the hand-me-downs of other players. So the good, I said, I liked that the book got better. I said Xander's adopts a senior dog. So I said Stevie volunteers at an animal shelter. And I said that was sweet, especially when he donated like $50,000 to the shelter. I thought that was really nice. I said Xander's learns to communicate with his father and finally tell his mother off, which I liked because it was his mother was a piece of shit. And I said Stevie's father comes to see her and talk more about why he thinks Stevie's mother is acting so cruel. So it's Stevie meets Xander's mother outside of Xander's apartment, and she scolds her and double flips her off. And I was like, good for you, Stevie, sticking up for him. But that was the only things I liked about the book. You know, there was a lot of things I really just disliked. And this review is definitely, you know, this video is definitely longer than anticipated. So I'll try to, you know, finish up. So the next book was Whispers in the Dark by Nicole Knight and Lily Main. I gave this a 2-star. I really disliked this. It was so depressing. So we have the characters of Cody and Noor. So this book was depressing as fuck and not an enjoyable reading experience. So I said Cody is the nurse / maid to his family. He cooks, cleans, drives his stepdad to doctor's appointments. His stepdad is a major piece of crap. And I said he treats Cody horribly by telling him that he's a mistake because Cody's mom cheated on the stepdad years ago, and that's how Cody came into existence. So the stepdad never lets Cody forget it. And it's like, why are you blaming the child for the mother's mistake? The mother stepped out and got pregnant with some other guy's kid, and you're going to blame the baby. You're going to blame the kid. You don't blame the kid for that. The kid didn't ask to be born. I would never, like, you know, I would never, if I was in a situation where it's like you're married to this person, but you don't want to, like, divorce them because, you know, you still love them, and say, like, you know, he made a mistake and you're trying to work on your marriage and stuff like that, and then, like, the woman that he fooled around with got pregnant, you know, and you decide to take in the kid because you don't want anything to do with it. I wouldn't, you know, it's not right to take it out on that child, you know. I would want to treat that child the same way I would treat my other kids, because it's not that kid's fault, you know. She should have been more safe with protecting herself and from getting pregnant, you know. So the stepdad is dying because he has cirrhosis of the liver, you know, which is basically, you know, like a fatty liver. If your liver is shot, you're screwed. You know, the liver is a very remarkable thing because it can heal itself to a certain point. Like if, say, you end up having part of your liver removed, it will partially grow back. That's the thing about the liver. It's very interesting. But if you go and you do enough drinking to where you damage your liver that much, you're fucked. You are really fucked. So he's got cirrhosis of the liver and he is diabetic, which doesn't help. But he doesn't do anything to change his diet or to stop drinking. That's also Brad, Cody's half-brother and father's real son, is a piece of crap as well. As he treats Cody horribly, he physically abuses and bullies Cody on the daily. Brad is also an enabler, where he always gets his dad bad food to eat. Brad is also an alcoholic, and from my reading experience, is also maybe either bi-curious, or he's either bisexual or gay. And he doesn't want to admit it or hates that he is that way, which is what you would call like internalized homophobia, where you don't want to be gay, you know? Because he seems like he wants to get intimate with Cody. I said, which is still incest, because it's like you have the same mom but different dads. It's still incest. It's gross. It's wrong. So he very much gave off the creepy vibes. I said, Cody's mom is barely in the story, and honestly, she's supposed to be the only one who treated Cody well, but she's a shell of a woman and has basically given up on life. I said she works overtime so she can pay the bills, but to also spend as much time as she can away from her family. Even like toward the end of the book, she had said to him, like, well, you're free now, you know, if you want to go live your own life, you know? And I was like, that bothered me, you know? Because I'm like, if you're in a bad situation, like say if I was in a bad situation with my children and like, you know, if there's like some kind of abuse, I would take the hit because I don't want my children dealing with that. I would take the hit. I don't care how much abuse is happening toward me. I don't want it happening toward my kids. No one's hurting my kids. You know, I will take the abuse. So for me, I felt like his mother kind of abandoned him to that situation. She knew what was going on and she just didn't care. That's not a good mother. So said Cody works from home on his computer, and lately at night, he's been having nightmares, and one night a sleep demon, Nor, lets Cody know that he is there under Cody's bed. So sleep demons feed off of humans' nightmares. So Nor and Cody every night talk while Cody is getting ready for bed, and they get to know each other and become sexually attracted to each other to the point where they start to play with each other sexually. So the daytime parts of this story, I'm assuming, were written by Nicole Knight, were so depressing and sad. I honestly could have done without them. Cody lived a bad life, so I can understand why he wanted to escape his reality and why he also suffered from nightmares. I said the nighttime scenes were better, and I'm assuming they were written by Lily Mayne. I said, but this reminded me too much of her Monstrous series. I said, Nor reminded me too much of Wynn from Soul Eater, and Nor even had very similar sexual anatomy to Wynn. And I said, Lau, a character from the Nor's world, reminded me of Moth from the Monstrous series. I said, so it seemed like Lily Mayne was copying her own characters to create this sleep demon character, which makes the author look lazy in the writing, or that she doesn't even remember her previous character's anatomy. I said, overall, it was okay, but it bored me throughout most or saddened me. It was just very depressing. So this last one I'll get to, and this will be done, is I ended up reading Ruby Dixon's Surviving Skarr, Ice Planet Clones. This is like the third series in the Ice Planet series. You had Ice Planet, you have Ice Home, and then you have this one here. So the characters are Skarr and Vivian, so she's Vivi, and she's a clone. I said, I think Ruby Dixon has jumped the shark when it has come to the series. I said, in the last book, there was the discovery of a whole tribe of people underneath the fruit cave, and now we have all of these alien or human clones. So I said, I wasn't a fan of either one of these characters until about 40% of the point. Both of them were just unlikable to me, and I didn't care for them. I said, also, there was some continuity issues in this book. For one, Floor asked Vivi about her pronouns. So I said, how would Floor know this? I said, Floor and the other ladies have been away from Earth for a while, and pronouns has only been around a short time in society. I said, so Fleur mentioning that completely took me out of the story. And there were other things in this book that annoyed me or parts that I found were boring. And there was someone that actually reminded me of, there was another booktuber. She actually commented on my video, and she had said, like, yeah, she remembered that when she had read Daisy's story, which was in the Ice Home series, she had stated that she was pretty sure that was around 2010 when Daisy was abducted. So those ladies were probably abducted around the same time, or possibly earlier. And we weren't talking about stuff like that back in that time, you know? So to me, it was like, this is a continuity issue. Ruby Dixon's worried about pronouns, when I felt like that was something that you really didn't need to have in like stuff like this, in a series like this, where we're not taking place on Earth. We're taking place on a planet that is called Not Hoth, you know, that Georgie, you know, from the first book had basically came up with, you know, or it was like one of the earlier women had come up with the name, because they're like, there was Hoth, you know, which is a Star Wars reference, and there's not Hoth. So it's weird, very weird. Where it's like, why would you come up with pronouns? It's weird. And so also the character of Vivi turned over a new leaf really fast, especially when it came to not wanting babies, and her mentioning that if her and Skarr didn't want the kid, she would have the tribe raise the child. I said then all of a sudden seeing herself having a baby with Skarr, within a few chapters she was different, and I thought that was way too quickly for that kind of change of heart. You know, there are people out there who don't want to have kids, which I completely understand, you know, so it's not like all of a sudden they're going to just change their mind. Especially if they have their mind set like, no, I don't want any kids. Like, I don't like kids, or you just don't feel like you'll be a good parent, that type of thing. I can understand that. And it just really irritated me where she was basically saying like, oh, well, we could just give the kid to like the villagers or the other people, the other humans to raise. And it's like, why? You're giving them more responsibility. Everybody has their own job. So I'm like, if you do have a kid, whether or not you liked the fact that you were, you know, you didn't want to be a parent, you have the responsibility of taking care of that child, you know? And if you feel like that you need help with like raising that kid, there was plenty of people on the, you know, on the planet that would help, you know? It's not like you're going to get left by yourself to raise this child, you know? You're going to get help from the other people. So, and sometimes, you know, if you have a kid, sometimes that like turns your mind around, where you're like, wow, I actually like being a parent. I actually like being a mom, or like being a dad, you know? Sometimes you can get kind of like a cold feet kind of thing, where you're not sure if you're going to be a good parent, and then you rise to the challenge, you know? So I just didn't like how it was portrayed in here. It irritated me, you know? Especially for the fact that Ruby Dixon could have created other characters, like older heroines that got stuck on the planet, that maybe didn't like there's some women who are born without uteruses. There are some women who have some kind of dysfunction where they can't, you know, get pregnant, you know? And then you have other women who have gone through menopause. Like, they don't have any more eggs. You know, there's only so many eggs that we have in our system. And then once our eggs are gone, that's it. Where men can keep shooting out fucking, you know, sperm till the day they die, you know, and they can go and make babies, you know, where us, we only have a limited time frame of having children, you know. So I felt like Ruby Dixon really dropped the ball with this, because she could have created other heroines that maybe weren't able to have children, you know. And then maybe that woman, like, maybe you created a character where she's like, she desperately wanted children, but she wasn't able to have any of her own. But she's like, oh, she'll help, like, babysit the other kids and stuff like that. You could do that. That's part of, like, a person's job, where they end up watching the children, you know. And maybe they're like, hey, I'll be a teacher to the little ones while the parents are doing, you know, their jobs and all that stuff, and getting the, you know, village run properly, you know. You could have had a character like that. That would have been a perfectly good story, where it's like, you know, she feels bad because she's not able to have children, but she ends up like turning over a new leaf with her personality. Instead of her feeling sad about it, she's like, well, I can be a great aunt, you know, and I can go and help raise the other little children, you know, in the village. that to me is like, you're still providing a way of like, guidance for the little ones, you know? You're still a parent, like, in a sense, because you're putting them in the right direction to have them be good people growing up, you know? You are, in a sense, a mentor, you know? So you can be like that. So I just really didn't like how Ruby Dixon did it in this. It could have been done better. So I liked seeing Skarr's transformation with his character. I see he was so annoying, and some people who reviewed this book said he was like Ashtar, and I would have to disagree, because Ashtar was hilarious. I said there was a scene in this book where Skarr was mentioning Jason's human peen. I said the human clone, compared to his two peens that Skarr had. I said that conversation was hilarious, especially when Ashtar was in the conversation. I said, so Ashtar and Skarr were similar in the beginning, but Skarr really doesn't have much of a personality because Ruby Dixon didn't give him much of one, you know? Like, he really didn't have much of a personality with himself. Once he, like, knew a little bit more of, like, human etiquette or the other etiquette that the other, you know, people had, he went and was doing more of that. But he didn't really have much of his own personality, for the fact that, you know, only thing he was made for was to be a clone of like a warrior and fight. That was the only thing he was good for. It's like, you fight and that's like all you do. That's your job. So he had to kind of get his mind around the fact that he's not a warrior anymore. He's not a gladiator and things like that. He needs to, like, put his mind in the fact of, like, doing other things and becoming like a father and a husband type of thing, you know? And he grew on me as a character. I first didn't like him, but he grew on me. With her, I really didn't like. I did not like her. I did not like her at all. And she really infuriated me with that whole thing of, like, oh, give the baby away. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. So anyways, sorry for this long, video, but I had to kind of, like, explain all my reasonings of why I didn't like these books. And if you enjoyed them, awesome. I'm glad that you did. But, you know, we are different people. We're not going to have the same thoughts. We're all going to have different things we like about a book and different things we don't like about a book. So I'm hoping that in 2024, I will have a better year. And less DNFs, maybe less bad books. Let's cross our fingers and hope so. But that's pretty much it for this video here. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. And I will see you all on the next video. All right. Bye.